In 1999, Volkswagen unveiled a car that made Ferrari nervous. The same company that built the Beetle, the same company that told the world it was the people's car, the same company that walked into the Geneva Motor Show, pulled the cover off something that had no business existing, and the room went quiet. It had a W12 engine, 12 cylinders arranged in a configuration so compact, so mechanically obsessive, that it didn't fit inside a car that had ever been built before. So Volkswagen built a new car around it. They called it the W12 Nardo. And for 3 days at Italy's Nardo Ring, a high-speed oval in the middle of nowhere, it broke 27 world records. 27. And then Volkswagen killed it. They took the car that redefined what a production vehicle was even capable of being, and they buried it so deep that most people alive today have never heard its name. Stay with me. You have to understand what Volkswagen was in the late 90s to understand why this is such a remarkable story. Ferdinand Piëch was running the company, and if you don't know that name, Ferdinand Piëch is one of the most terrifying figures in automotive history, and understanding him is the only way any of what follows makes sense. He was the grandson of Ferdinand Porsche. He had engineered the Porsche 917, the car that won Le Mans and that Steve McQueen immortalized. He had built the Audi Quattro system from scratch, and then he became CEO of Volkswagen Group. And Volkswagen Group, under Piëch, did not behave like a car company. It behaved like an empire expanding its borders. In 1998 alone, 1 year, Piëch acquired Lamborghini. He acquired Bentley. He acquired Bugatti. And throughout all of this, he had one singular obsession that drove every single decision he made. He wanted Volkswagen to build the fastest production car in the world. That obsession is what created the W12 Nardo, and that obsession is also what destroyed it eventually. The W12 engine itself deserves a moment, because it is not a normal thing. The W configuration, as opposed to a traditional V, takes two narrow-angle VR6 blocks and fuses them together at the crankshaft. The engineers who first proposed this were not being practical. They were being fanatical. In the Nardo concept, the W12 produced 420 horsepower. In later iterations, it would be tuned refined until it was producing numbers that sat in a completely different conversation. But in 1999, 420 horsepower in a mid-engine layout, wrapped in bodywork that generated genuine downforce at speed, was not a concept car or fantasy. It was a working prototype. The Nardo Ring is not a glamorous place. It is a 7.8-kilometer banked oval in Apulia, in the heel of Italy's boot, surrounded by scrubland and heat haze and almost nothing else. It was built in the 1970s specifically as a high-speed testing circuit. Volkswagen arrived in October 1999. They ran the W12 Nardo for 24 hours straight, and it averaged over 300 kilometers per hour for the entire duration. The car didn't break. It didn't overheat. It simply ran, hour after hour, at speeds that most supercars of that era couldn't sustain for 15 minutes. The Nardo was a fully enclosed, aerodynamically refined automobile with interior space for 2 people and luggage. When the results were filed and verified, Volkswagen had a car that worked, that held together, and that had just embarrassed the entire supercar industry on paper. Now here is where the story starts to turn, because Piëch had his proof of concept. He had the engine, the data, he had everything he needed to announce a production supercar. And for a moment, it looked like that was exactly what was going to happen. The automotive press was writing about it, about what a street-legal W12 Nardo would actually feel like to drive. There were conversations inside Volkswagen about a limited production run. Numbers like 200 units were being floated. The car had fans before it had a price, and then Piëch moved the target. The W12 engine, the same fundamental architecture, was going to a different car. It was going to Bugatti, and not just to Bugatti. It was going to become something else entirely in the process. It was going to be doubled. What Piëch had decided, and this is the decision that explains everything, is that the W12 was not the destination. It was the proof that the destination was possible. He had used the Nardo program to demonstrate to his own engineers, to his own board, to the entire automotive world, that Volkswagen Group had the technical capability to build an engine of this configuration and this performance level and make it survive. But surviving at 300 kilometers per hour for 24 hours was not the goal anymore. The goal was 400. The W12 became the W16. 8 additional cylinders, 4 turbochargers, 1,001 horsepower, and it went into the Bugatti Veyron. The Veyron is, by every objective engineering measure, one of the most extraordinary objects ever manufactured. The tires were custom developed by Michelin because no existing tire could safely operate at the speeds the car was capable of. The fuel system delivered fuel at a rate that would empty the tank in roughly 12 minutes at full power. Every single subsystem was pushed to the absolute edge of what materials science and fluid dynamics could produce in the early 2000s, and it cost Volkswagen somewhere between 5 and 6 million euros to manufacture each one, which means the Veyron was not a product. It was a statement, and it worked. The Veyron became the car of its era. It set the top speed record. It dominated the conversation. It made Bugatti a brand that had been dormant for decades, into one of the most recognizable names in the world again. But here's what it cost. The W12 never got a production version. The platform that had run for 24 hours at over 300 kilometers per hour was abandoned. The molds were not used. The car that Geneva had quietly lost its mind over in 1999 was reclassified as a technology demonstrator and filed away. 2 prototypes survive. One is in the Autostadt Museum in Wolfsburg. The other is believed to be in private storage. That's it. 2 cars, no production, no legacy that most people alive today can even name. And here's the thing nobody talks about. The Nardo would have been a different kind of car from the Veyron. The Veyron was a machine for conquering numbers. It was engineered around one purpose: maximum velocity in a road-legal package. Everything about it, the weight, the complexity, the cost, the infrastructure required to maintain it, was justified by that singular goal. It was a monument. You didn't drive a Veyron the way you drove a Ferrari. You drove it the way you piloted something, with awareness of what it could do. The Nardo, in the configuration it was demonstrating, was smaller, lighter, more immediate. The kind of car that gives you information through the seat and the wheel and the sound rather than through a readout. Some of the engineers who worked on the program have spoken about what they believed the Nardo could have been. That car never got made. What got made instead was the greatest number ever printed on a spec sheet. Now I want to give you something to think about. Because this story doesn't end in 1999, and it doesn't end with the Veyron. The W12 engine that powered the Nardo records didn't disappear either. Volkswagen put it into production. In a completely different form. It appeared in the Audi A8 as a luxury saloon engine. It appeared in the Bentley Continental GT, where it became one of the most celebrated grand touring power plants in history. A version of it powered the Phaeton. There's a version of the story where Piech is the visionary, where destroying the Nardo to fund the Veyron was the correct decision because it produced something more historically significant. There's also another version where Piech was a man who could not tolerate half measures, who saw the Nardo as a stepping stone and who stepped on it without fully appreciating what was being compressed underfoot, who traded a car that people would have loved, in the specific, physical, driving on a roadway that people love cars, for a monument that most people can only appreciate from the outside of a rope barrier at a concourse. Both versions are true. That's what makes it grief, and not just history. because here's what I want you to sit with before you close this. In 1999, before the Veyron existed, before Bugatti was a household name again, before anyone had proved that a production car could go 400 kilometers per hour, Volkswagen had a car that went to an oval in southern Italy and ran for 3 days without stopping. A car that broke 27 records. A car that 2 prototypes of still exist. And most people who walk past it have no idea what it is. That is the story of the Volkswagen W12 Nardo, the greatest supercar this company ever built. If you've made it this far, drop a comment. Tell me, do you think PX made the right call? Subscribe and I'll see you in the next one.